Good morning. My name is Lisa Raju Kessler, and I am on Facebook Live representing the Ecumenical Buddhist Society of Little Rock. I'm actually in my home in Maine right now, broadcasting, and just like to welcome you here today to spend a little time hopefully calming our lives down a little bit, just sitting together and practicing our meditation. So, as always, I try to think of a little something to talk about that relates to meditation. And so this morning I was online looking at some different things, looking at some quotes from one of our Buddhist meditation leaders, Jack Cornfield. So if you're not familiar with Jack, he is one of the founders of the Insight Meditation Society, also Spirit Rock, which is I think out in California. Never been there, but I've heard really good things about it. And he's written some great books too. So I saw something online. It's just a couple of paragraphs that I thought I would read. And so I'm just pulling that up on my phone right now. And he calls this the sacred pause. And so here's what he has to say. Our life can take on a whirlwind quality of working, responding, answering, solving, building, caring, tending, and enjoying. When we are busy and conflicts or difficulties arise, we can easily find ourselves overwhelmed or reacting to problems in ways that make things worse. Because experience happens so quickly, unskillful, habitual responses can come out of our mouth before we know it. It helps to practice skillful responses when things are easy. That way, when things are tough, a healthy pattern is available, already set. It also helps to train ourselves to pause before we respond. So this is called the sacred pause, a moment where we stop and release our identification with problems and reactions. Without a pause, our actions are automatic. In a moment of stopping, we break the spell between past result and automatic reaction. When we pause, we can notice the actual experience, pain or pleasure, fear or excitement in the stillness before our habits arise. We become free to act wisely. In this pause, we can examine our intention. The power of intention is most easily visible in our speech. So he goes on to talk about how we can use this pause when we're talking to other people and perhaps bring about, often a more pleasant sort of interaction where the other person may be more likely to pause themselves and to really take in and try to understand the perspective that you're providing. So what I was thinking about this week, of course, the war in Ukraine continues on my mind, and it's just so hard because I think we all, look at the situation and want to do something about it. And then the question is, what can we do? What we do know is that often when other countries jump into wars, in the long run, the outcome is not good. Oh, so what do we do as individuals? Well, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to think of what we can do. But one thing we can do is that we can set a stage of a sort of non-conflict. And so that may be the conflict that we have inside of ourselves, or the conflict that we often have with other people. Now, this may seem pretty distant from the war in Ukraine, but it is something that we do have some control over. So an example that I think of that comes up in my daily life would be, if you turn on the TV and there's all these shows with individuals talking about political views. And that has become something that has become so divisive for us. I mean, it's always been there, but it just seems like lately that divide becomes stronger and stronger, to the point that, you turn on one TV channel and here's a person who's very convincingly espousing one extreme sort of perspective. Let's just say it's what some people might call very left-wing, or some of us might prefer to call it just progressive. Then you change the channel and here's somebody else with a more of a what we refer to as conservative or right-wing kind of perspective. And you gotta say that they're pretty convincing too. I mean, we each have our own biases, and so certainly one perspective is more convincing than the others. So this happens in our daily life, where we may be in a conversation that looks like it's leading to an argument or conflict between you and another person. And I know that someone who has an opposite perspective from me, they can talk all day long and argue with me all day long, and it's probably not going to change my mind. And on the other hand, I need to recognize that I can talk and argue all day long on my perspective, and I'm probably not going to change their mind. So what we can do is practice sort of a conflict resolution. How can we move beyond that conflict, or before that conflict even happens? Well, one way we can do that is to pause. And so I think that that's kind of what Jack Cornfield is saying here. This is what I get out of it, that sacred pause where we stop and consider what we're going to say, and is what we're going to say compassionate. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't have an opinion. It doesn't mean that you're going to not express your opinion necessarily. But how can you say it in a way that it doesn't become an argument that further divides you and that other person? In looking at some of Jack's videos, he also talks a bit about how that division actually can occur within ourselves too. That we like to sort of think we can divide the world up into bad and good, right and evil. But the truth is that all of these things can exist within us too. Although we do tend towards non-duality in our Buddhist teachings, well, part of that is knowing that each person consists of all these different things. I can't say that I'm good and somebody else is bad, or that I'm always right and this other person is always wrong. So this pause in a conversation gives us that opportunity to really think about, how can my response be constructive? How can my response really and that other person to come closer together? So, practicing a lot like meditation. So in meditation, we're teaching ourselves to go inside, to notice what's going on in our body, to just stop before we sort of blurt out something that we feel very strongly about, to notice what we're feeling inside of our body, to take a relaxing breath, and then consider what is a wise way to open a dialogue rather than just arguing with that other person. So with that said, let's just start our meditation. So I'm sitting on cushions this morning on the floor. I will say that my internet is telling me it's not happy with my connection, so I'm hoping that won't be a problem for us. So as I sit on my cushions, my back is straight and strong. And then I just allow the muscles in my abdomen, the front of my body, to completely relax. Allow the belly to expand. And as you take a breath in, focus on filling up the bottom of your belly, allowing that to expand as we then bring in more and more of our breath, filling up our lungs, noticing what that feels like, and then just releasing that breath. Perhaps just noticing that first breath may help you begin to relax physically and mentally. Noticing any place in our body where we're holding tension. This may be in our jaws, neck. Often we need to go back and check that belly regularly to make sure we haven't tensed up those muscles. And with our back strong and straight, we can allow our shoulders to just drop away from our ears. The arms can relax, just dropping away from the shoulders. And you may want to consider placing your hands on the top of your legs, your upper legs. Or I like to place my hands right below the belly button in the Cosmic Mudra. The legs can be relaxed. If you're sitting in a chair, it may be helpful again to sit upright if this is comfortable for you, placing the feet flat on the floor in front of you, and just breathing. Breathing in, we fill up the whole front of our body, and breathing out, we just release. Very little effort is needed as we just allow the breath in and allow the breath out. And as we notice what this feels like, consider for just a moment how you could bring this state that your body's currently in, how can you bring that with you and have the opportunity to come back to this relaxed state when you're in what feels like a verbal conflict with somebody else. Consider if you were able, before you responded or perhaps reacted to what the other person said, you can just bring this relaxed state within your body and then consider what would be compassionate right now. Not necessarily agreeing with something you don't agree with. But then again, possibly not arguing and making the assumption that you're right and the other person is wrong. Just bringing your full attention to that moment. And perhaps even making a statement to that other person that might help open up their perspective. Not to see things necessarily the way you do, but just to be open to possibilities. And so we'll just sit with this for about 10 more minutes. And notice if any negative thoughts are arising, maybe thoughts that are like, but I've got to say what I believe, or I've got to try to convince this other person. But instead of those thoughts, just continue to go inside your body, to focus on the breath, to notice as we relax our body, often we can think more clearly. We can engage that part of the brain that allows for a more open dialogue. And so as we continue sitting together, you may notice thoughts arising, and most likely those thoughts trigger certain emotions that may trigger love for you, but it may also trigger anxiety or fear. So notice that emotion for a moment. Notice when you have a thought and the emotion rises, if you just sit with that for a few seconds, you'll notice how it most likely will come up and then just start to taper off. And then you can just simply return your attention to your breath. So as we come close to wrapping up our time together, Jack goes on to say in this article, try this during the next argument or conflict. Take a pause. Hold everyone's struggle in compassion. Reflect on your highest intention. Whenever things get difficult, pause before you speak and sense your wisest motivation. From there, it will all flow better. This is the secret of wise speech. As the Buddha describes it, speak with kindly motivation. Speak what is true and helpful. Speak in due season and to the benefit of all. When we pause and connect with our highest intention, we learn to see with eyes of compassion, and everything becomes more workable. And this is an excerpt from his book, The Wise Heart. And so as we finish our meditation, I just like to dedicate the merit of our time together to all beings across the world. And just another little quote that I like to say during my meditation. This actually came from a yoga practice that I do. And it goes like this: may all beings everywhere be happy and free. May the thoughts, words, and actions of my own heart contribute in some way to that happiness and to that freedom for all. So thank you so much for joining me today. I know when we're worried about the war and see the horrible things that are going on over in Ukraine, we see those, on TV or the internet, and we're motivated to do something, and if you're like me, you just kind of feel helpless. But one thing you can do is to just hold all these individuals in your heart and wish them freedom and wish them happiness. And in your own interactions, to react or respond with compassion and love in your heart, with the hope that that will flourish from you to others and perhaps around the world. So thank you again, and I hope you have a beautiful day.